Joining me this morning from Institute for Reforming Government, Chief Legal Counsel Jake Curtis. Good morning, Jake. I know you've been up, or you were up early and up late last night.
Good morning, Meg. Yeah, no, it was a long night. I guess I'll start with a thank you. I mean, I hope people realize, and I know you know this, Meg. The number of volunteers across the state. We'll dig into the race and the results, but just a quick thank you to all the people across the state that the last 3-4 months in not great weather, right, have been knocking on doors, attending rallies and town halls, and then last night I always remind people, and I know you and I've talked about this, that there are hundreds of people across the state on election day, right, when everybody is kind of waiting around for the results. There's hundreds of volunteers across the state that are working on election integrity efforts. And I had the privilege of being in the war room, as they call it, last night, or throughout the day. And it's just a great team of people that truly care about election integrity, right? They're not into the conspiracy theories. They're out there observing and working with the actual election inspectors, and obviously disagreeing with them sometimes, but respectfully observing, and that's taking place across the entire state. We had a great team in place. The state party, the Republican National Lawyers Association that I do a lot of work with, and even the National Party. I mean, there's a robust effort in the state. And I know it's an issue people really care about. So I just want to take a moment to thank everybody, because literally it's hundreds of volunteers across the entire state that spend the entire day, 7 a.m. till we were still getting calls at 11 o'clock. I mean, we were literally telling people, guys, it's over. Thank you for your efforts. And they're still out there trying to preserve the vote, and they're just passionate about election integrity. So I just wanted to say a quick thank you.
Yes, and obviously, Jake, it did not at all go the way we had hoped and planned and worked for the results. And it really is. I mean, it's tough not to be discouraged and demoralized. And I know a lot of listeners that have reached out and have said, and I mean, I'm trying to find the glass is half full, the silver lining in all of this. I mean, we have to move forward. I mean, we certainly can't give up, and I mean, we've got, we can take a break from it, but there is something coming up in 2026, and I think we really need to sort of regroup and look at how we can, what we can learn from this, and really learn from, as you said in the last, you put this on X, posted on the X. I don't even know what time. About 7:40 this morning, that the playbook we have been using for 15 years needs to be burned. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so obviously was not the result we were looking for. So I think in a situation like this, I think it's foolish to try to pick apart and find these little glimmers of hope. I mean, we can do that, but I'm not sure it's really worth it. I think what we need to do is just kind of look at the playbook, and we need to just completely start over and rebuild. Because if we don't do that, we're at risk of just making the same mistake, running the same campaigns. And if you look at the last 15 years, really since Walker's loss in 18. Hagedorn won in 19, and obviously Senator Johnson, he's unique in that he's just really built up this very kind of independent reputation. And then you have Trump. I mean, outside of those, we've really lost everything. And so at some point, we need to revisit the playbook that we're using, because it's not resulting in the wins we need. I mean, to the extent I don't know if it's a sliver of hope. I guess maybe it's, a data point to show that Wisconsin remains unique is we had a fundamental plank of the conservative movement, voter ID. When that question was presented to the voters of Wisconsin last night, or yesterday, it overwhelmingly passed, 62.9%. So basically 63%. So a strong majority. I'm looking at the map right now. Basically, other than Dane County, almost every county supported voter ID. So, I think that's a really critical point. When conservative, you can look back to last fall. Obviously, we had success last fall, but it was a close margin. The constitutional amendment relating to citizen-only voting passed overwhelmingly. Wasn't it over like 70%?
Yes.
So when you put these conservative policies, not all, right? I mean, there's going to be some conservative policies that maybe a majority of Wisconsinites don't support, but a lot of them, when you put them in front of the voters, and the polling we've done at IRG, I think, kind of shows this. There are elements in the state that still overwhelmingly support conservative policies. So then when you look at a result from last night, we have 63% of voters supporting voter ID, and then by almost a 10-point margin, a uber liberal candidate winning for Supreme Court. There's a disconnect right now, right? There's a disconnect, and I think it comes down to the messaging. You and I were talking off air. Brad, was he the perfect candidate? Maybe not, but he's a good guy. He worked his tail off. $107 million was spent in this race. Campaign and outside groups combined. $58 million went in support of Judge Schimmel. We did not lose the fundraising battle. We complain about Soros and all these lefty progressive billionaires. Well, Musk came in hard, and so really that was a wash, right? And we had a good candidate in Judge Schimmel that ran hard. Well, so what's the element that's missing? I think it's a message. I think it ultimately comes down to messaging, Meg. We're not running on the right issues, right? We run these playbooks relating to he's soft on crime, she's soft on crime. He had this light sentence, she had this light sentence. It's a tennis match, right? Back and forth. And all of your listeners, right, they're listening because they're dialed in, they know the issues. That's not your average voter. Your average voter, right, they're working, they raise a family, they're doing their thing. And they're not dialed in like your listeners and you and me. And so when you have these just back and forth ads that don't really resonate, but this is the playbook we've been running since 2010, and we need to continue to do that. That's what the argument is. That's just, at some point we need to revisit that. It's not working. Go down the line of all the issues you and I have been talking about, Meg, for the last 3 months. Voter ID. Now, obviously, we had a win on that last night. But Act 10, school choice, religious liberty, the business climate, all the issues that IRG has been focusing on and putting primers out every single week, those are the issues that are going to move people. And I guess I'll leave it to the experts, in Madison to figure out how you message that. But I think that we're running the same playbook. It's not working. So maybe we need to try something different.
I cannot disagree with you at all. I mean, because obviously, and I'll add to this, and I've had conversations this morning already about this. And I mean, and I'll just say for anyone that's just joining us, I'm talking today, as I do on Wednesday mornings, with Jake Curtis, who's from Institute for Reforming Government. But what I guess what concerns me is that, as you said, we're repeating the same, repeating the same behaviors, expecting different results. But back in 2009, 2010 is when I got plugged in and engaged and involved here in Wisconsin. We had just moved to Wisconsin from the Twin Cities a few years before that. And what fueled the Walker administration into office and the reforms. It was the Tea Party movement in great part, and it was people who were fed up. I mean, T could stand for taxed enough already. People were angry, and I would say on the opposite side, yesterday there were a bunch of angry people that showed up in droves to vote against what they perceive as something that they disagree with about our. Guess what? Our federal government.
That's exactly right,
Yikes.
Megan. And I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think that's a great example of, right, in 2010, right? And that was the year Walker wins, and we have this just groundswell of support. Well, it was fundamentally a response to obviously President Obama's election, and then the policies that he implemented, right? And that's where I don't mean it in kind of in a flippant way. We have this playbook, and it needs to be completely gutted because the issues that people care about, and this is where, look, I'm not like some hater of consultants. I've actually served in that role occasionally myself for smaller races. Like, campaigns need consultants. They need people giving them advice. But if you're part of the consultant class, I think you need to start rethinking, like, do these ads, these tough on crime ads, I mean, this is the thing, Meg. The Democrats have co-opted that message, right? If you look at Crawford's messaging, all her messaging was anti-Musk, and she's tough on crime, Schimmel's soft on crime, which is ironic, right? As a 35-year prosecutor and attorney general, I don't know how that argument could stick against Judge Schimmel, but it kind of did.
I want to just interject for a second, Jake. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, it's fine.
We've been playing in our coverage of this race, this Crawford's win last night. We've been playing this clip, which drives me crazy, but it's Susan Crawford saying to her jubilant supporters as she was announced a winner, our courts are not for sale. And I would add to that, to conservatives, because let's face it, she had even more money from billionaires and millionaires from out of state flowing into her campaign. So, I mean, she took our message. We used to say that about the Democrats before this election.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, they are winning the battle for big funders, which again is ironic as the side of the aisle that absolutely opposed, Citizens United. But they've basically co-opted that strategy. They've co-opted the tough on crime messaging. I mean, that was frankly, if you're watching college basketball last weekend, at least here in Southeast Wisconsin, every single ad was a Crawford ad talking about how Brad Schimmel's soft on crime. Justice Dallett did the same thing when she won. What was that, 2018, right? So I mean, they've gotten very good at essentially taking the playbook that we were using, and now they're using it to their advantage. So then again, so how do we respond to that? Do we just continue to run the same playbook? I think we need to, and I thought that was a great point you made, Meg, that when you look back when we really had the energy, it was in 2010. And what were the issues we were talking about? And this is where, again, I'm not hating on kind of the Madison conservative crowd, but the message from them always is you got to run on basic issues like law and order, public safety. Well, everybody wants that, and then you're told you can't run on some of these wonkier issues. But again, you go through the list of the issues that people care about. They care about, in Southeast Wisconsin, they really care about school choice. In northern Wisconsin, I'd call it the hook and bullet issues, right? They care about the Second Amendment. They care about their right to hunt and fish. The entire state cares about the business climate. And, I think the traditional kind of consulting class, they don't think you can run on those issues. But I thought your point was great, Meg. When you look at 2010, those are pretty substantive issues that we were winning on. National debt, healthcare policy. Those are kind of wonky issues, and we won on them. I mean, I think we need to think long and hard about revisiting how we run these campaigns, and we need to talk about the issues. At IRG, we talk about the kitchen table issues. Well, there's a reason that's our mission, because we want to remain focused on the issues people care about. And it's education, it's the business climate, healthcare policy. I mean, all those issues that in kind of a roundabout way can absolutely be impacted by the courts. If those are the issues people care about, why are we not running the campaigns focused on those issues?
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's kind of like, so, and I mean, of course, this is all our opinions, and I mean, there's a certain amount of prognosticating that goes on talk radio, go figure. But I mean, I'm inclined to believe that the consultants that were advising, and I don't have information to back this up, but just based on what I observed, I'm inclined to believe that the consultants looked at the messaging that worked for Trump and thought, well, we're going to use the same messaging for Schimmel. And rather than maybe, and of course I can say this, hindsight, but rather than maybe looking at, or even, I don't know, doing some polling to see what the electorate considered to be the most important issues right now in this time, as opposed to what were the important issues in 2024.
Well, I guess I wasn't going to open up that can of worms, but since you did, Meg,
all right, fair enough.
At IRG, we've been doing polling. We put out our poll. I believe it was you and I talked about 4 or 5 weeks ago. It had Schimmel down, and we had some of our allies kind of jump all over us, saying that our poll was garbage. Obviously, we wanted Schimmel to be up, but we're also going to put out objective work product. And it didn't show a blowout. I think it had him down 6 points. And we thought it would serve as a rallying cry for people to start focusing on the issues. And to your point, Meg, again, we've been focusing on polling the electorate to see what are the issues they care about. And they care about kitchen table issues. And yes, public safety is one of them, but there are so many others. And we need to rethink how we run these campaigns. Another, I think, important point you raised, Meg, is, right, we seem to be running this Trump playbook. Look, the reality is this Trump coalition is very difficult to keep together. I'm not sure how many data points we need to prove the point that with Trump not on the ballot, you can't run the same campaign and expect to win. It's just, I guess, I don't know. You open with doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? I don't know. That's a definition of insanity.
Yep.
Like, if we want to be insane and continue to run the same playbook, but expect a different result, it's just not going to work out. With Trump not at the top of the ticket, you can't be running the same campaign. And the coalition is, I think, very fragile. You know this. I'm down in southeast Wisconsin. The ground is shifting under our feet. Ozaukee County, I'm pulling up the numbers right now. Ozaukee County went 51% to Brad Schimmel. Right? This was a vaunted Ozaukee County in the WOW counties when back in 2010 it was going 67, 68% for Governor Walker and conservative candidates. A significant shift. Brittany Kinzer outperformed Brad Schimmel in Ozaukee County by almost 3%. She got over 54%. So, this playbook of run up the score in the WOW counties to kind of neutralize Dane and Milwaukee and then hope outstate shows up to vote, it doesn't work. And I love northern Wisconsin, Meg. I have nothing but good things to say about it. But when it comes to elections, there's just not enough conservative voters outstate to counteract the insane turnout that we see in Dane and Milwaukee County. We cannot continue to hemorrhage voters in the suburbs. We absolutely need the support from outstate, but this is just a numbers game, right? There's not enough voters. The BOW counties, Brown, Outagamie, Winnebago, didn't show up, and Schimmel lost Kenosha and Racine. I think those, in my mind, those are always the two bellwether counties, right? If Republicans win Kenosha and Racine, we're going to have a really good night. If we don't, it's going to be a long night, or a short night, as the case may be, right? And that's what we saw yesterday.
Oh,
underperforming in Kenosha, Racine, underperforming BOW, and Winnebago, Washington, Ozaukee, Washington didn't show up, and the numbers out of Dane and Milwaukee were insane. And so despite having good turnout outstate, the numbers don't stack up. So this Trump coalition, is, again, I wouldn't say it's bad, right? I don't want to go down that road. What I'm saying or suggesting is it's very fragile. This coalition is fragile, and if you don't have the correct and precise messaging, it's not going to work.
Okay, so I know we're almost out of time, but I can't stop talking to you, Jake. So, a couple things you brought up, consultant class, and I want people, listeners, to understand this, is that When someone runs for office, and I mean, you can correct me if I'm not relaying this accurately, but when someone runs for office, a candidate runs for office, they don't consult with the Republican Party per se. They hire consultants. They pay consultants to advise them on their campaigns, completely separate from RPW. And consultants are paid if the candidate loses or if they win. And I was having a conversation yesterday about this, and I'm fairly certain it was before the unfortunate results came out. But I did say, it really is curious how many people on our side now seem to grift off of elections, and how there are really no measurables that they have to live up to. And it's curious to me that we continue to rely on these same people to lose elections for us.
Well, there was a lot there, Meg.
Take a stab.
To quickly unpack. Yeah, I'll quickly unpack it. So,
take your time.
So, just from a basic standpoint, yes, there's a lot of blocking and tackling that happens with campaigns. These are state. I always remind people it's like running a business, right? And so I don't. It's not bad. Consultants inherently are not bad. If you're running a company, you need a lawyer, you need a CPA, you need a digital person. It's the same thing for a campaign, right? If you're running, and especially now, I mean, with the voter contacts, and how they sift through all that data, it's very sophisticated. And then you have the marketing or the comms side of it, where you need to be having messaging out on social media platforms and talk radio and TV and so a consultant typically is the one who's going to kind of put that all together. They're kind of like the CEO, and so they're really important roles. But to your point, Meg, there's a disconnect right now when results really they don't matter. They're going to get paid whether they win or lose, and which I get, right? I mean, as a capitalist, right, you provide value to somebody and services, you're going to get paid. That inherently is not a bad thing, but that's why I keep coming back to the messaging. We need to rethink how we do this messaging, and that's why I think groups like IRG and Will and McIver and frankly Talk Radio are so important.
Thank you for putting me in your category. Wow.
Well, I mean, seriously, because we don't do politics. We're a C3. Obviously, we talk about politics. We're literally doing it right now because we put out our work product and we believe in free markets and small government and choice when it comes to education. And you just go down the list. We believe in in those policies. We put out this work product, and then we hope that the politicians actually carry forward with those policies. When it comes to judicial races, we believe strongly in a judicial philosophy that respects the legislature. So we put out that work product, and we hope it gets certainly campaigned on and advocated for by the policymakers. And when it comes to elections, all right, our funders fund us to put out good policy, and so we can objectively look at what's working and what's not working. So I guess ultimately that's my point, and that's why I include talk radio, because you're not getting paid whether somebody wins or loses. You're getting paid to put out good work product by your advertisers. You're not going to have advertisers if you're not putting out content that people want to listen to. So that's why I absolutely include talk radio. And so I think it's important for us in that group to look at this and I guess help the consultant class, because again, I know many of them. They're good people.
Right. I'm not digging on them per se, but boy, we better have like a come to Jesus meeting with them, Jake, you and I.
Right. right. And that's my goal, is to try to recenter us on how we get that messaging right and how we focus on the issues that people care about, because that's I guess the only way. I mean, if we don't do that, I'm concerned that these Dane County and Milwaukee County numbers are just going to continue to overwhelm the rest of the state.
Okay, so I promise I will let you go after this, but I do want to say, and something that stuck in my mind, it has stuck in my mind from a listener, and this is what's so cool. And I say this, and I'm going to repeat this again because I know there's some listeners this morning that have are mad about this topic this morning, or whatever. And I always say, iron sharpens iron, and I appreciate the respectful discourse, and I think that really makes us all rises us or causes us all to rise. And there was a listener prior to the election that said he was really concerned, and it stuck with me, that not enough of the messaging was about how our taxes were going to go up should Susan Crawford get elected. And I don't remember any ads on television, and I was my bliss in watching Wheel of Fortune every night was often interrupted by anti-Brad Schimmel ads or Susan Crawford ads, and nothing about how our taxes were going to go up. And I feel like that would have been a good message.
Obviously that's what we've been talking about the whole time, and that's absolutely right. You have to run. I'm not claiming to be an expert on running campaigns, but if you're going to have messaging that's not connecting with the people that are actually going to vote, again, from just as a layman, right? I'm not a campaign expert, but I don't see how that makes sense. And this is why I go back to kind of my example of the tennis match. It's just a back and forth on these soft on crime, soft sentencing ads, and I just don't think they connect with the average person. Because again, not every voter out there listens to Meg Ellefson every day, although they should.
How dare they?
Not every voter reads everything from IRG, although they should.
Right.
Your average voter is kind of they're living their life, and then maybe the week before the election, maybe a couple weeks before voting absentee, they do some quick research and they make a decision. So if that messaging isn't resonating with them, they're just going to kind of go with a gut reaction. And we haven't really talked about this, but I think one of the kind of key elements in this race was kind of the gut reaction was, boy, I don't like that Musk guy. He's spending too much money. And again, obviously I don't agree with it from the standpoint that she also had billionaires supporting her.
Right.
But that's realistically what this race came down to. It was a referendum on Elon Musk, and we lost it overwhelmingly. And so I guess one final point, Meg, is so we're at this, I feel like we definitely are we're on the precipice, right? Not to be overly dramatic or hyperbolic, but the next 3 years are really, really critical for the state of Wisconsin. We had another Supreme Court race in 26 for conservative Rebecca Bradley. We have a race in 27 for conservative Annette Ziegler. So we're playing defense on the Supreme Court for the next 2 years just to maintain our 4-3 minority, right? And if we don't do it right, it could be 6-1 by 2028. If we can hold the next two, then our next opportunity to flip is in 28. We have an attorney general and a gubernatorial race in 26. We have got to get it right over the next 3 years. Either we're going to preserve all the reforms over the last 15 years and maybe even do some good things like eliminating the income tax. That's one of the things IRG boldly talks about. Or if we don't do that, we're going to go backwards even further. And people forget Michigan had a conservative governor and conservative legislature not that long ago. And now look at where they are today. So, this is a really critical 3 years in the state of Wisconsin, and we have got to get it right.
Amen. Absolutely. Jake Curtis, thanks. Thanks for holding over and taking a little bit more time. I know you got to prep for your next radio spot with Vicki. Give her my best, and I look forward to our conversation next week.
Thanks, Meg. Appreciate it.
Keep up the great work, and go out, find Jake Curtis out on X, and, of course, Institute for Reforming Government, reforminggovernment.com. Got to take a break. I'll be right back on the Meg Ellefson Show on WSAU.